Hey, good Monday, or I'm sorry, today's Wednesday. Good Wednesday morning. It's 10:36, and today I want to talk about Schlitz beer and Clyde Hopkins. Now, um, and really the whole point of this video is kind of a preamble to this Saturday's conversation. For those of you who haven't listened yet, I'm doing every Saturday 9 a.m. I'm going through certain marketing books and extracting, really dense books and extracting some very applicable points for people that are trying to increase the likelihood of people buying their products and or services and just are generally interested in the world of marketing. And so this chapter that I'll be coming up this Saturday in the book of Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got by Jay Abraham, I will be discussing unique selling propositions. And it's so critical that I wanted to have like a just talk a little bit about the necessity of your unique selling proposition. And so it's really important for you to kind of think through your story, what makes you unique. What you'll find is that a lot of people haven't really dove into why somebody should buy from you and not somebody else and or do nothing at all. Famous Stan Kennedy quote. So it is really, really critical for you to grasp what makes your business unique. And so, by way of just preparing for this Saturday, I wanted to talk to you today about your unique selling proposition. And I want to give you an example of how this worked back in the early 1900s. I think it was about 1920. Schlitz beer was like rated. I've heard different ratings on this. They're rated like there was only like 8 brewing companies in the United States at the time. And out of those 8 to 10, they were like 7th. So they were really low. Their numbers were really hurting. And so they hired a famous copywriter, marketer, Clyde Hopkins, which actually will be the next book I'll be discussing in Marketing Cafe once I get through Jay Abraham's book. And his book is titled Scientific Advertising Foundational. I'll also be sharing with you where to buy that book because it's not published any longer. So we'll go through some places that you can go to get that book. But anyway, so Schlitz beer is really hurting at this time. So they go to Clyde Hopkins and ask them to market their beer, to figure out a marketing campaign that can rescue what the problem is with the beer. And, so basically everybody at that time talked about their beer is pure. For whatever reason, that was the selling proposition that people needed. The problem was everybody did it. They just said like, our beer is pure, and pure was in all the advertising that people were doing. So Clyde's job was to find out what that actually really meant. So what he did and what Clyde Hopkins was really good at doing was discovering the specific qualities that made up words that businesses describe themselves as. So in this case, he wanted to know what pure actually meant. So he scheduled to have a moment where he actually went and he did a entire like walkthrough of the plant. He was shown like different pipes that were like intentionally dripping beer over, like they were dripping, the beer was dripping pipes, basically dripping beer liquid over some like cleansed pipes. And so he asked, why are you doing this? And he was told that those rooms were filled with like filtered air so the beer could be cooled without impurities. And then he was shown like these really expensive filters that were filled with like white wood pulp, and they provided a superior filtering process is basically what they claimed. And so he asked like, what does this entail? And they talked about how the filters were cleaned and the pipes were cleaned twice a day to assure purity, and how even the bottles were sterilized, not once, but twice. Actually, it was 4 times. They were sterilized 4 times before being filled with the actual alcohol. And then from there, they were shown the 4,000-foot deep artesian well. This was on Lake Michigan. And at that time, obviously, Lake Michigan didn't have the pollution problems that it does today, but they had a 4,000-foot artesian well that they had dug to make sure that they had the best and most clean water that they can possibly have. And then he was taken to the laboratory and showed basically the mother yeast cell that was that was a product of 1,200 experiments. They literally went through 1,200 experiments to get this flavor right. And that was the yeast that was made in all of, obviously, the beer. And so basically there's this whole process of how they brewed this alcohol. And at the end of the tour, he's just blown away. He's looking at this huge well and how they're bringing up this water, and they're cleaning and sterilizing things multiple times a day. So it's the most cleanest possible beer that you could have at the end of the day. And so once he was done with the tour, he asked, why don't you tell people this process? Why don't you tell people all that you're doing to make your beer so superb? And they said, well, the problem is everybody else does it the same way. Everybody else does it exactly the same way that we do it. They may have a little different depth of their artesian well, but it's all the same. So why tell people? And so he basically went back and said, yeah, the problem is everybody might do it the same way, but nobody's telling people how they do it. So they conjured up a marketing campaign where essentially they discussed the purity and the process of creating the Schlitz beer. And basically what happened within 6 months, they went from number 8 to number 1 in selling products and selling beer. And so this is just a brief story as to how sometimes explaining your process can actually be good for the consumer. Now, it's not the number one way, because typically people only care about the end result. They only care about how it benefits them. And there's time and time again where people over-explain, or they try to convince, when in reality you should be promoting what the end result is for the consumer. So how to utilize this depends on your industry, depends on what that process is, depends on how much of a selling factor that process might be. But the point is, understanding a good, unique selling proposition can differentiate you from everyone else and really promote you to the forefront of the consumer's mind. And also it indicates how important it is to have effective marketing, how you need to essentially be diving into how things are done to understand how they should be marketed. So that's the story of Schlitz beer. That's in preparation for this Saturday at 9 a.m. I'm going to be discussing how to create your unique selling proposition as we're going through Jay Abraham's book. So I encourage you to do a couple things. Obviously, I want you to like this video, subscribe to the channel. Also go to graftedin.io, and I have an email list, and I'm going to give a little bit more tips, some PDFs after this next one on how to create a unique selling proposition that will be really helpful. So if you have yet to sign up for the newsletter, go to graftedin.io and just sign up right there, about a quarter, basically the second page, if you will. As you scroll down, you'll get to the second fold of the first homepage, and just subscribe and you'll get information on how to create your own unique selling proposition. And that's it. That's all I have for today. Appreciate you guys being here, and we will I'll talk to you this Saturday.